Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna,
And now Chapter 10, Spiritual Attachment and Material Detachment. Text 18. Jnana Vairagya Yuktena Bhakti Yuktena Chatmana Paripashyatyudasinam Prakritim Chahatojasam. Translation. In that position of self-realization, by practice of knowledge and renunciation in devotional service, one sees everything in the right perspective. He becomes indifferent to material existence, and the material influence acts less powerfully upon him. Purport. As the contamination of the germs of a particular disease can influence a weaker person, similarly, the influence of material nature or illusory energy can act on the weaker or conditioned soul, but not on the liberated soul. Self-realization is the position of the liberated state. One understands his constitutional position by knowledge and vairagya, renunciation. Without knowledge, one cannot have realization. The realization that one is the infinitesimal part and parcel of the Supreme Spirit makes one unattached to material conditional life. That is the beginning of devotional service. Unless one is liberated from material contamination, one cannot engage in the devotional service of the Lord. In this verse, therefore, it is stated, Jnana Vairagya Yuktena. When one is in full knowledge of one's constitutional position and is in the renounced order of life, detached from material attraction, then by pure devotional service, bhakti yuktena, he can engage himself as a loving servant of the Lord. Paripashyati means that he can see everything in its right perspective. Then the influence of material nature becomes almost nil. This is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita. Brahma Bhuta Prasanatma. When one is self-realized, he becomes happy and free from the influence of material nature. And at that time, he is freed from lamentation and hankering. The Lord states that position as Mad Bhaktim Labhate Param, the real beginning of devotional service. Similarly, it is confirmed in the Narada Pancharatra that when the senses are purified, they can then be engaged in the devotional service of the Lord. One who is attached to material contamination cannot be a devotee. In the conditional state, we are influenced by material nature. We have already discussed how we are conditioned by the three modes of material nature: ignorance, passion, and goodness. Goodness is superior to ignorance and passion, because from the platform of goodness we can come to understand Krishna and thereby transcend the modes altogether. In this age, people are generally influenced by the lower modes, the modes of ignorance and passion. In these modes, we are not able to serve Krishna. It is our constitutional position to serve someone, but when we do not serve Krishna, we serve Maya. In any case, we cannot become master. Who can say that he is a master, that he is not serving anyone? We may serve our family, society, country, business, automobile, or whatever. If one cannot find anything to serve, he goes and buys a cat or dog and serves it. Why is this? It is because service is our nature. We are simply lacking the knowledge of where to direct the service. Service is meant to be rendered to Krishna. In the material world, we are serving our lusty desires, not Krishna, and we are deriving no pleasure from this. We are also serving in an office or in some employment in order to get some money. In this case, we are serving money, not the person. Thus, in the material world, we serve the senses and money. In any case, service is there. We must serve. Actually, the only master is Krishna. Ekale Ishvara Krishna Ara Saba Britya. From the Caitanya Caritamrta, Adi Lila, chapter 5, verse 142. All the demigods, human beings, animals, trees, and everything else are servants. Self-realization is realizing that one is the eternal servant of Krishna, and that one's duty is to serve him. Self-realization is not thinking aham brahmasmi, I have become Brahman, Bhagavan. How can we become Bhagavan? If we are Bhagavan, we are actually the Supreme Powerful One. If this is the case, why are we in a miserable condition? Why are we under the influence of Maya? Does Bhagavan come under the influence of Maya? No. Krishna says specifically in Bhagavad Gita that Prakriti Maya is working under his directions. Maya is the maidservant of Krishna. And if we are the servants of Maya, how can we be Krishna, Bhagavan? When we come to our spiritual senses, we can understand that we are erroneously engaged in Maya's service, and that our duty is to engage in Krishna's service. That is self-realization. As stated here, Jnana Vairagya Yuktena. Real understanding is knowing oneself to be the servant of Krishna, no one else. Because we are under illusion, we are serving Kama, Lobha, Moha, Matsarya, lust and greed, without benefit and without pleasure. Kama dinam kati na katidha palita durnidesha, which means, quote, there is no limit to the unwanted orders of lusty desires, unquote. From the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 3:2-25. When we come to the understanding that our pleasure lies in serving Krishna only, we have attained Jnana Vairagya. Therefore, in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 2, Verse 7, it is stated, Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Jana Yatyashu Vairagyam Jnanam Cha Yad Ahaitukam, which means, quote, by rendering devotional service unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, one immediately acquires causeless knowledge and detachment from the world, unquote. If one engages in the service of Vasudeva, Krishna, this knowledge comes and one becomes a Mahatma. A Mahatma is one who realizes that Krishna is everything. He does not defy Krishna or try to become Krishna. One who does so is not a Mahatma, but a Duratma, a rascal. What is the position and knowledge of a Mahatma? Krishna states, Mahatmanas tu mam partha daivim prakritim ashritaha bhajantyananya manaso gyatva bhutadim avyayam, which means, quote, O son of Pritha, those who are not deluded, the great souls, are under the protection of the divine nature. They are fully engaged in devotional service because they know me as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, original and inexhaustible. Unquote. From the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, verse 13. A Mahatma cannot be manufactured. He is under the Daivi Prakriti, the divine nature. There are two kinds of Prakriti, Para Prakriti and Apara Prakriti. Apara Prakriti is the material world, and Daivi Prakriti is the spiritual world. As soon as one understands that he is uselessly serving Maya in the material world in the form of society, friends, country, and so forth, one reaches the stage called jnana, knowledge. As soon as one attains this knowledge, he reaches the Brahma Bhuta stage, Brahman realization, and he becomes prasanatma, happy. One may ask, why should I serve Krishna? We have already explained that being a part means serving the whole. The whole is Krishna, and the individuals are meant for Krishna's satisfaction. Isha vasyam idam sarvam. There are many Ishvaras, controllers, but the supreme Ishvara is Krishna. As soon as one attains this realization, he has attained perfect knowledge, and he renders service in bhakti yoga. Foolish people say that bhakti is meant for agyanis, unintelligent people, but this is not the case. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna indicates that after many births, the jnani, the man in knowledge, surrenders unto him. As long as we do not understand Krishna, Vasudeva, we should understand that we are still fools. We may advertise ourselves as very great jnanis, learned personalities, but we are actually fools. That is the Shastric conclusion. If we are actually jnanis, we should surrender unto Krishna. There are many dharmas or activities. Some are pious and some impious, but Krishna tells us to give up both. Arjuna was thinking that it was impious to fight with his relatives, but Krishna was insisting that he fight. How could Arjuna act impiously? He could not, because Krishna's service is transcendental to pious and impious activity. At midnight, when the gopis heard the sound of Krishna's flute, they ran to the forest to join him. According to the Shastras, it is immoral for young girls to go see a young boy in the forest in the dead of night. But this was not an impious activity because the gopis did this for Krishna. Caitanya Mahaprabhu, who was so strict that no woman could even come near him to offer respects, actually said, Ramya Kachid Upasana Vrajavadu Vargena Ya Kalpita, which means, quote, what could be more wonderful than that worship conceived by the gopis, unquote. Although it actually appeared immoral for the gopis to dance with Krishna, Caitanya Mahaprabhu states that their relation with Krishna is the highest form of worship. This is actually transcendental knowledge. One becomes transcendental to all pious and impious activities when one serves Krishna. After all, piety and impiety are within the material modes. Krishna's service is transcendental to good and bad, pious and impious. Bhakti Yoga begins when jnana and vairagya are complete. Jnana is knowledge, and vairagya is detachment from matter and engagement of the mind in spirit. Both of these are automatically attained when we engage in devotional service to Krishna. Text 19. Nayujyamanaya bhaktya bhagavatya kilatmani sadrishosti shiva panta yoginam brahmasiddhaye. Translation. Perfection in self-realization cannot be attained by any kind of yogi unless he engages in devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, for that is the only auspicious path. Purport. That knowledge and renunciation are never perfect unless joined by devotional service is explicitly explained here. Na yujyamanaya means without being dovetailed. When there is devotional service, the question arises where to offer that service. Devotional service is to be offered to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the Supersoul of everything, for that is the only reliable path of self-realization or Brahman realization. The word Brahma Siddhaye means to understand oneself to be different from matter, to understand oneself to be Brahman. The Vedic words are Aham Brahmasmi. Brahma Siddhi means that one should know that he is not matter. He is pure soul. There are different kinds of yogis, but every yogi is supposed to have attained self-realization or Brahman realization. It is clearly stated here that unless one is fully engaged in the devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one cannot easily approach the path of Brahma Siddhi. In the beginning of the second chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, it is stated that when one engages in the devotional service of Vasudeva, spiritual knowledge and renunciation of the material world are automatically manifest. Thus, a devotee does not have to strive separately for renunciation or knowledge. Devotional service itself is so powerful that by one's service, everything is revealed. It is stated here, Shiva Panta. This is the only auspicious path for self-realization. The path of devotional service is the most confidential means for attaining Brahman realization. That perfection in Brahman realization is attained through the auspicious path of devotional service indicates that the so-called Brahman realization or realization of the Brahmajyoti effulgence is not Brahma Siddhi. Beyond that Brahmajyoti, there is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the Upanishads, a devotee prays to the Lord to kindly put aside the effulgence, Brahmajyoti, so that the devotee may see within the Brahmajyoti the actual eternal form of the Lord. Unless one attains realization of the transcendental form of the Lord, there is no question of bhakti. Bhakti necessitates the existence of the recipient of devotional service and the devotee who renders devotional service. Brahma Siddhi through devotional service is realization of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The understanding of the effulgent rays of the body of the Supreme Godhead is not the perfect stage of Brahma Siddhi or Brahman realization. Nor is the realization of the Paramatma feature of the Supreme Person perfect, because Bhagavan, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is Akilatma. He is the Supersoul. One who realizes the Supreme Personality realizes the other features, namely the Paramatma feature and the Brahman feature, and that total realization is Brahma Siddhi. As stated before, The word yoga means to connect. Brahma Siddhaye means self-realization, and Aham Brahmasmi means I am spirit soul. Actually, realizing oneself to be spirit is not sufficient. One has to progress further. One's fever may be cured, but one must also regain his strength and appetite in order to be totally cured. Then one can have a normal, healthy life, free of disease. Similarly, simply realizing that one is spirit soul is not sufficient. One has to engage in spiritual activity, and that spiritual activity is bhakti. Mayavadi philosophers think that it is sufficient to stop all material activity, and the Buddhist philosophers advocate nirvana, cessation of material life. Neither give more information. Actually, we are suffering due to this material combination, and that is a fact. This body is composed of earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and ego. The Buddhists and Mayavadis advocate the annihilation of the components. They say, let the earth go to earth, let the water go to water, let the fire go to fire and become zero. If we dismantle the house of the material body and become zero, we attain nirvana. Nirvana means the cessation of pleasure and pain. The Mayavadis and Buddhists claim that if we fill an empty pitcher, the water will make some sound as long as the pitcher is not completely filled. When the pitcher is filled, there will no longer be any sound. Thus they claim that all the Vedic mantras and hymns stop when one is completely Brahman realized. In other words, the Buddhists and Mayavadis claim that the material world is false, mithya, and that we should somehow or other make it zero. However, simply realizing Brahman, realizing one's identity as spirit soul, is insufficient. We must realize that Bhagavan is everywhere. Eko pyaso rachayatum jagad andakotim yachchaktir asti jagad andachayayat anta andantarasta paramanu chayantarastam govindam aripurusham tam aham bhajami. Which means, quote, I worship the personality of Godhead, Govinda, who by one of his plenary portions enters the existence of every universe and every atomic particle, and thus unlimitedly manifests his infinite energy all over the material creation. Unquote. From the Brahma Samhita, chapter 5, verse 35. Sri Bhagavan is not alone. He is not only localized, but is everywhere. Although Krishna has a particular place, he is everywhere. It is not that because Krishna is in one place, he cannot be in others. Since we are conditioned, when we sit in our office, we cannot be at home. Krishna is not like this. Goloka eva nivasatya kilatma bhuta. Krishna is always in Goloka Vrindavan, yet he is Andantara sta paramanu chayantara stam. He is within every atom of this universe. This universe is existing due to the Garbhodakashayi Vishnu. There is not only one universe, but there are many millions, and they are all working very nicely because the Garbhodakashayi Vishnu is present. We should not think that all these planets are floating in space without any arrangement having been made. There is definitely an arrangement. In order to be completely free of the material modes, one has to come not only to the platform of jnana and vairagya, but to bhakti also. When we mention bhakti, some people say, I render bhakti to my wife. I love her very much and take care of her. If I do not see her, I become mad. Thus people have bhakti for their family, country, goddess Durga, other demigods, and so on. However, that kind of bhakti will not do. Therefore it is said, Bhaktir Bhagavati. Bhakti must be rendered unto the Supreme. It is not that one should render bhakti unto an imitation Bhagavan. If one says that he is Bhagavan, we should ask, are you present in everyone's heart? Can you tell me what I am thinking now? If one is Bhagavan, he must be Akilatma. If one is Ishvara, he must be present in everyone's heart. Krishna is present in everyone's heart. Sarvasya chaham riddhi sanivishta. All this should be scrutinizingly studied. It is not that one should accept this rascal or that rascal as Bhagavan. Nor should one render bhakti to this demigod or that demigod, to one's family, country, society, wife, cat, dog, or whatever. All this is not really bhakti, but imitation bhakti. It is actually lustful desire. If we can develop bhakti for Krishna, Krishna consciousness, our lives will be successful. Actually, there is no alternative. As stated in this verse, Sadrisho sti Shiva Panta. Para-Brahman is Krishna, and Brahma Siddhaye means understanding our relationship with Krishna. It is all right for one to understand oneself as Brahman, Aham Brahmasmi. But what is our relationship with the Para-Brahman? There are always two, Brahman and Para-Brahman, Atma and Paramatma, Ishvara and Parameshvar, the individual living being and the supreme living being, Nitya and Nityanam, Chaitanash and Chaitananam. There are always two present, and two means a relationship. We should therefore understand our relationship with the Supreme, with Para-Brahman. Understanding that relationship is Brahma Siddhaye. We are qualitatively one with Para-Brahman, but Para-Brahman is very great, whereas we are very small. Para-Brahman is one, Kaivalya. There is no alternative and no duplicate. There is no one equal to him or greater than him. This is the meaning of Kaivalya. Human life is meant for inquiring about Para-Brahman and one's relationship with him. Unfortunately, people are not asking questions about Para-Brahman. Everyone is asking about the news and the morning paper, and everyone is concerned with going to the market and purchasing so many goods for cheaper prices. All this is going on in human society and in cat and dog society also. This world is full of darkness and ignorance, but Krishna consciousness is transcendental to this material world. In Krishna consciousness, there is no darkness, but simply light. If we try to find things at night, it becomes very difficult. However, in the daytime, there is no difficulty. The Shastras enjoin that we leave this darkness and come to light. This light is given by the Guru. Omagyana timirandasya gyananjana shalakaya chakshur unmilitam yena tasmai shri gurave namaha, which means, quote, I was born in the darkest ignorance, and my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. I offer my respectful obeisances unto him. Unquote. It is the Guru's business to give light by knowledge. The Guru has completely assimilated the Vedic essence of life. Shruti, knowledge, is received by hearing. It is not experimental. We cannot understand that which is beyond our sense perception by experiment. We cannot understand who our Father is by experimental knowledge. One cannot say, let me find out who my Father is by experiment. Our Father was existing before we were existing, and it is not possible to understand by experimental knowledge that this or that man is my Father. The real authority is the mother. Therefore, Vedic knowledge has been likened to the mother and the Puranas to the sisters. We should understand from the Vedas what ultimate knowledge really is. The ultimate knowable objective is Krishna, and simply by understanding Krishna, we can understand everything. We do not have to understand things separately. Krishna is within our hearts. He is not far away. Rather, he is everywhere. If Krishna sees that we are attached to him, he becomes our friend. He is a friend to everyone, but he is especially a friend to his devotees. As Krishna himself says in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 10, verse 11, Tesham evanu kampartam aham agyanajam tamaha nashayam yatma bhavasto jnana dipena basvata, which means, quote, out of compassion for them, I, dwelling in their hearts, destroy with the shining lamp of knowledge the darkness born of ignorance. Unquote. Jnana is there. It is simply covered with the curtain of ignorance. Light is there, and darkness is there. But when we are in darkness, we cannot see things as they are. Krishna says that as one devotes himself to rendering service, he himself dispels the darkness of ignorance. If we actually want to become perfect in this life, we only need to engage in devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagavan. It is not that Bhagavan is difficult to find. Bhagavan is within the heart. Ishvara sarva bhutanam riddeshe rujana tishtati, from the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 18, verse 61. That is the real Bhagavan within the hearts of all. That Bhagavan is always active. He instructed Brahma, the Lord of the universe, and Brahma, having received Krishna's instructions, created the entire universe. Krishna will also give instructions to us if we simply take to devotional service. Text 20. Prasangam ajaram pasham atmana kavayo vidu sa eva sadhushu krito mokshadvaram aparvritam. Translation. Every learned man knows very well that attachment for the material is the greatest entanglement of the spirit soul. But that same attachment, when applied to self-realized devotees, opens the door of liberation. Purport. Here it is clearly stated that attachment for one thing is the cause of bondage in conditioned life, and the same attachment, when applied to something else, opens the door of liberation. Attachment cannot be killed. It has simply to be transferred. Attachment for material things is called material consciousness, and attachment for Krishna or his devotee is called Krishna consciousness. Consciousness, therefore, is the platform of attachment. It is clearly stated here that when we simply purify the consciousness from material consciousness to Krishna consciousness, we attain liberation. Despite the statement that one should give up attachment, desirelessness is not possible for a living entity. A living entity, by constitution, has the propensity to be attached to something. We see that if someone has no object of attachment, if he has no children, he transfers his attachment to cats and dogs. This indicates that the propensity for attachment cannot be stopped. Rather, it must be utilized for the best purpose. Our attachment for material things perpetuates our conditional state, but the same attachment, when transferred to the Supreme Personality of Godhead or his devotee, is the source of liberation. Here it is recommended that attachment should be transferred to the self-realized devotees, the sadhus. And who is a sadhu? A sadhu is not just an ordinary man with a saffron robe or long beard. A sadhu is described in Bhagavad Gita as one who unflinchingly engages in devotional service. Even though one is found not to be following the strict rules and regulations of devotional service, if one simply has unflinching faith in Krishna, the Supreme Person, he is understood to be a sadhu. Sadhur eva sa mantavya. A sadhu is a strict follower of devotional service. It is recommended here that if one at all wants to realize Brahman or spiritual perfection, his attachment should be transferred to the sadhu or devotee. Lord Chaitanya also confirmed this. Lava matra sadhu sange sarva siddhi haya. Simply by a moment's association with a sadhu, one can attain perfection. Mahatma is a synonym of sadhu. It is said that service to a Mahatma or elevated devotee of the Lord is Dvaram Ahur Vimukte, the royal road of liberation. Mahat Sebam Dvaram Ahur Vimukte Stamo Dvaram Yoshitam Sangi Sangam. From the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 5, Verse 2. Rendering service to the materialists has the opposite effect. If anyone offers service to a gross materialist, or a person engaged only in sense enjoyment, then by association with such a person, the door to hell is opened. The same principle is confirmed here. Attachment to a devotee is attachment to the service of the Lord, because if one associates with a sadhu, the sadhu will teach one how to become a devotee, a worshipper, and a sincere servitor of the Lord. These are the gifts of a sadhu. If we want to associate with a sadhu, we cannot expect him to give us instructions on how to improve our material condition, but he will instruct us how to cut the knot of the contamination of material attraction and how to elevate ourselves in devotional service. That is the result of associating with a sadhu. Kapila Muni first of all instructs that the path of liberation begins with such association. According to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Shastre Kaya, Lava Matra Sadhu Sange, Sarva Siddhi Haya, which means, quote, "The verdict of all revealed scriptures is that by even a moment's association with a pure devotee, one can attain all success." Unquote. From the Caitanya Caritamrta, Madhya Lila, chapter 22, verse 54. It is said that man is a social animal, and according to our association, we can mold our character. Businessmen associate with one another to develop their business capabilities. There are many different types of association, and association brings about bondage to a particular thing. If one associates with materialistic people, one's bondage to sense gratification tightens. Woman is the symbol of sense gratification. Therefore, anything dealing with sense gratification is called Yoshit Sangha. This material world is filled with Yoshit Sangha because everyone is interested in sense gratification. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verse 44, Bhogaishvarya prasaktanam tya parata chetasam Vyavasayatmika buddhi samado na vidiyate, which means, quote, "In the minds of those who are too attached to sense enjoyment and material opulence, and who are bewildered by such things, the resolute determination of devotional service to the Supreme Lord does not take place." Unquote. The word bhoga means sense gratification. Bhogaishvarya, those who are overly attached to opulence and sense gratification cannot understand spiritual life, and they are very slow to take to it. At the present moment, people are manda, very slow. They do not take this Krishna consciousness movement very seriously because they have been taught by modern civilization simply to enjoy life for sense gratification. In the Western countries especially, there are many implements for sense gratification. There are even machines for shaving, although formerly an ordinary razor would do. Now, thanks to the machine, one does not even have to move his hand. So this is considered progress. However, we learn from the Shastras that human life is not meant for sense enjoyment, but for tapasya. That is Vedic civilization. First of all, one must be trained in the brahmachari system and learn how to deny the senses. A brahmachari should be trained in tapasya, not in enjoyment. Formerly, brahmacharis would have to go from door to door to beg alms for the ashram, and they were trained from the very beginning to address every woman as mother. Presently, people are in such a miserable condition that they are saying, "Let us die, let us die." However, Krishna in Bhagavad Gita says, "Why should you die?" People want to die in order to put an end to the threefold miseries of material nature. But who is making research on how to stop death? From Bhagavad Gita we learn that death is not really natural for us. It is artificially imposed upon us, and we have to become deathless again. That is the perfection of human life, but no one cares about it. We have become so dull that we cannot avoid birth, old age, disease, and death. We are actually experiencing them because we are not alert. For this reason, when Sanatana Goswami approached Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he said, My dear Lord, somehow or other you have dragged me to your lotus feet. I am now asking you what my actual position is. Why am I forced to suffer the threefold miseries of material life? No one is interested in inquiring about this matter. Moksha, liberation, means getting free from the threefold miseries of life, as well as birth, old age, disease, and death. Sometimes when people are a little interested, they take to a path that is not even approved, or they invent something. But nothing need be invented. By this Krishna consciousness process, everyone can be elevated. Everyone can be delivered, regardless of his situation or culture. We have spread this Krishna consciousness movement throughout the world, and people are becoming happy because of it. According to Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, verse 32, anyone can take shelter of Krishna. Krishna never denies anyone, and similarly, Krishna's devotee never denies anyone. That is this Krishna consciousness movement. We tell everyone, yes, you are welcome. Take this education and spiritual life and become a devotee of Krishna. Sometimes we are criticized because of this. But Krishna specifically says in Bhagavad Gita that even those who are low-born can take shelter of him and become elevated for liberation. What then to speak of pious people born in Brahminical families? Unfortunately, in this age, people born in rich or Brahminical families often don't care for spiritual realization. They misuse their chance and exhaust the results of their pious activities. Society needs first-class sadhus in order to improve. If everyone is a Shudra and debauchee, how can society be peaceful? Therefore, in order to organize society, Krishna recommends the Varnashram Dharma. There must be ideal Brahmins, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas, and Shudras. However, no one cares about this now. One may ask, what is a sadhu? A sadhu is one who serves Krishna and engages in Krishna consciousness without reservation. In Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, verse 30, Sri Krishna says, Api chet sudaracharo bhajate mam ananya bhak sadur eva sa mantavya samyag vyavasito hisa, which means, quote, even if one commits the most abominable actions, if he is engaged in devotional service, he is to be considered saintly because he is properly situated. Unquote. It is the sadhu's business to be very tolerant. When one becomes a devotee, many people become one's enemy because in this age people are asuric, demoniac. Even one's father may turn into an enemy like Hiranyakashipu, the father of Prahlad Maharaj. Prahlad was only 5 years old and was chanting Hare Krishna, but his father was prepared to kill him because he was a devotee. Hiranyakashipu was saying, "Why are you chanting Hare Krishna? Why are you speaking of a separate God? I am God." That is the meaning of asuric, demoniac. Rascals who claim to be God themselves are simply demons. Although Prahlad's father was insisting that he was God, Prahlad Maharaj could not accept this. He simply accepted his father as an asura, and consequently there was a quarrel between them. When Hiranyakashipu asked Prahlad Maharaj, "What is the best thing you have learned from your teachers?" Prahlad replied, "O best of the asuras, as far as I can understand, because we have accepted this material body, we have to accept death. But this is not the object of human life. Human life is meant for moksha, liberation." Unfortunately, foolish people do not understand this. Krishna says, Mrityu sarva harashchaham, which means, quote, I am death, and I will take away everything you possess, unquote. From Bhagavad Gita, chapter 10, verse 34. Hiranyakashipu was such a powerful demon that even the demigods were afraid of him, but Krishna took everything away in a second. Hiranyakashipu was looking for security, and he was thinking, I will not die in this way, and I will not die in that way. But he did not think that he would be killed by the Lord in the form of Nrsimha. However intelligent we may be, and however much we may try to cheat Krishna, Krishna is always more intelligent. When Mother Yashoda tried to bind Krishna with a rope, she found that the rope was always 2 inches too short. Our intelligence is like that. We want to cheat God and surpass Him, but this is not possible. People think themselves very advanced in knowledge, but actually, due to their pride, their knowledge is taken away by Maya. Krishna actually takes the knowledge away from atheistic demoniac people like Hiranyakashipu. Atheists do not know that Krishna's intelligence is always at least 2 inches greater than anyone else's. In material life, we simply struggle for existence. We want to exist, and we do not want to die, nor do we want to undergo the pains of birth, catch diseases, or grow old. There are so many miseries in material life that we do not want, but they are forced upon us. Unfortunately, we are not intelligent enough to make a solution to all these problems. We should be inquiring, like Sanatana Goswami, about how to put an end to them all. Instead, we are working in such a way that we have to accept another material body. We are experiencing the difficulties arising from this material body, but we are not working in a way to become free. This Krishna consciousness movement is giving information on how to become liberated. Those who are Mahatmas are always engaged in chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Bhajan is the chanting of Hare Krishna. If we serve a Mahatma like Haridas Thakur, who is always engaged in chanting Hare Krishna, our path of liberation is opened. However, if we associate with materialistic people who are simply mad for sense gratification, we take the way of darkness. Tamodvaram yoshitam sangi sangam. The Vedas enjoin that we not remain in darkness, but that we go to the light. We have accepted a body, but we will not be allowed to remain in that body permanently. We will have to give it up and accept another, and then another, and another. What is this business? The material world is in such darkness, and people are taking on one body after another. The Krishna consciousness movement is therefore here to give enlightenment and liberation, and it is offering not only the simplest process of chanting Hare Krishna, but also the most sublime philosophy.